Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles.
We are continuing in chapter 42 at verse 10, okay? And just to remind you, we're dealing here with a person who is struggling with faith and doubt and trying to figure things out and not having much help in the process, and trying to, I'm not going to talk about chronology here because I don't think you can figure out exactly when this might have been written. But you're going to see now that there's terms in this right now immediately in verse 10 that already are showing contrasts between where God is and where he and the people are. Okay. So let's look at verse 10. All right, so the Hebrew, Omra Le'el Sal'i Lama Shechachtani, Lama Koder Elef Balachatz Oye. So I am saying to El Sal'i. What's a Selah with an ayin? Selah, a rock, right? Normally, what term do you find there? Sur, Sadi Tavresh, right? It's Sur is used mostly. Sur Yisrael in prayer, Kuma Yazrat Yisrael, and generally speaking. So it's just interesting to see here sort of a poetic, I would say poetic license, but it's almost an intentional use of a term that is not normal, and he's using it in a poetic setting. But now he says, Lama shachachtani. Why have you forgotten? When in verse 7 he says, as korcha, I remember you. So you see, basically what he's doing is he's setting up a contrast between how he and the people are operating. Okay, and that's part of his challenge to God here. So then he says, Lama koder elech. Why shall I go in darkness? Balachatz oyev, due to the pressure of the enemy. Okay, so he walks in darkness. In other words, he's down, he's dark, his world is dark because of this constant pressure where people say, where is your God? We're going to hear that in the next verse, that whole question. But again, remember we mentioned last week, it's not clear who is the enemy, right? It could be a real enemy, another person or people, but it also could be his own soul, an internal enemy who is confronting him with this doubt and with this ambivalence. And we don't know. And it's very likely that the author is possibly bouncing around here, reflecting this kind of ambivalence. So it's not clear. He's a poet. Remember, when poets do not always use terms that are immediately clear, right? There are nuances that they look at, metaphors, things like that. And this is good poetry. All right, now it goes on. Here, this is really, really interesting. Beretzach ba'atzmotai cherfuni tzorarai. Ooh, it's a nice little poem there. You hear it? Beretzach ba'atzmotai cherfuni tzorarai. The I at the end there. Okay? So what does it mean? Retzach usually means murder. It means destruction. It's bone-destroying taunts and revile, charaf, that verb, che, resh, vet sofit, it means to taunt, to revile. So his sorim, his enemies, his opponents, are what they do to him. It causes his bones to feel like they're being crushed. Very interesting. Yes, Geweret Hoppenstand.
Rabbi Rembaum. So, what I would like to say about verse 11 that we are reading now, that it's basically summarizing or coming to the main idea of this Tehillim, which is going back to Pasuk Dalet.
I haven't gotten there yet. You're right. Go ahead.
Oh, I think that the stress and the agony and his questions that he has, Lama Shchachtani, is actually, he's talking about the enemies. Who are the enemies? The enemies are the people who are challenging him, asking him, mocking at his God.
Yes, I agree.
And I think that this is kind of the main idea of this Tehillim, where he says, "Beretzach beratzmotai." It is in his bond, as if they are killing him, and Cherfuni tzorerai. First of all, it rhymes and the vocabulary is beautiful, and then repeats the idea of what was mentioned in Pasuk Dalet.
In verse 4, correct. But again, there are other times when it sounds as if his own soul is casting him into trouble. That's the point.
Yes.
And the question is, the enemies, and I don't have the answer. We just mentioned that, right? The enemies could be external, other people, and it's very possible, Remember, this man is he's a Levite and is a B'nai Korach, so he is very likely a man who serves in the temple. And as we've already seen, he yearns for the temple. And clearly he feels that he's far distant from the temple. Okay? So, and these could be people, so let me just, Tybal, I see your hand. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. It's relevant though. Trying to figure out who might those, and if it is an external enemy. And by the way, it may be an external enemy and an internal enemy as well, simultaneously. In other words, the pushing of the external enemy, whatever their reasons are, could begin to cast doubts on within himself about if his beliefs are valid. And that, so he could have two enemies that he's confronting. His own nefesh, the Yetzer Hara, what the rabbis would call his own evil inclination to have doubt, or possibly external enemy. So it's difficult to know, but I want to try to put a guess here. All right, and this is only a guess. So he talks about, remember he mentioned already that he seems to be in a place which is where the headwaters of the Jordan River, and he refers to mountain. Remember what last time we found those different verbs, right? Yarden, for like with the verb yarad, to go down low, and we said Hermon and Cherem being excluded, right, separated, and then har mitzar tzar tza'ir, low again. In other words, it seems to be a play on words referring to geographic locations, some of which we don't. I mean, we know where the Yarden. It's probably the headwaters of the Yarden, because south of the of the Sea of Galilee, it's not really much of a river. Up north, by the headwaters and up until the Sea of Galilee, if there's a lot of rain, it could be. I was there. I saw the Jordan River overflowing its banks. Okay, believe it or not, when I was there one winter. So, I mean, it can be that. And of course, Hermon is in the north. What the small mountain he talks about, I don't know. But it's far away. His whole point is, I'm far away from the temple. And I hear he got people arguing with him, possibly, taunting him. So I'm wondering so when could this be? What period in history would this be? As a Korachite, he would be associated, and clearly he says so, with Jerusalem. He's associated with the temple in Jerusalem. That's what he's yearning for. He wants to get there, but he can't. All right. So, and he seems, if he's in the north, now, if this is after the destruction of the temple, right, and he happens to be of the priestly and Levitical families that were taken out of Jerusalem by the Babylonians, and he's living along the border of the Persian Empire. Well, no, it's part of the Persian Empire now. But remember, he's among those to whom a prophet like Ezekiel may have been speaking, or second Isaiah, living in exile with them. And so, but he's there, he wants to get back, but he can't, because either he doesn't have the means, or it's not his turn. I don't know. And there are people up there within the community that are taunting him, because they have doubts. Why are we still here? Why are we still here? And so they're dumping that on him, because they're saying, so go and ask your God. You're the guy. You're the Levite. You're the guy who works in the temple. You're close to God. So you find out from him. Your God isn't doing his job. And it could be he's hearing that from them. That's one option. The second option is it may be that this is a Jerusalem Levite who was in the northern kingdom before the destruction of the north, before 722-21. And he went up there for some reason, and he's stuck up there. And this is a guy who speaks on behalf of this temple in Jerusalem, in the northern part of the country, where there are two temples that are different from the temple in Jerusalem, right? And they clearly would be deriding him because they're not even necessarily from the tribe of Levi, because they had their own set of priests and Levites that were not kosher from the perspective of the South. And so they're dumping on him, and he's stuck there, and he's miserable. So I'm just guessing. We don't know, okay? But it seems clear that he's in a setting far away where either the torment of the people has caused him to have torment of his own, or the torment of the people is making him miserable. But either way, he's asking for God to help him, okay? But I can't answer the question because we just don't have enough information. Or it just could be, maybe it's a Korahite Levite in the rebuilt temple who still has questions, and there are people around. We know that the Proto-Samaritans were running around at that time, giving them a lot of tsuras, okay? In other words, a breakaway, the people who previously had been Israelites, but now were cut off because they commingled with the pagans who were left behind in Eretz Yisrael with the Babylonian expulsion. And they were there, and they commingled. And the Jews coming back, I can use that word now, coming back from the exile, didn't want to have anything to do with these intermarried people, because it would put sin back within them, and they were afraid God would send them back up to exile. They didn't want that. So it could be there. We don't know. And that's, so anyhow, that's poetry, right? So you guys put yourself into the poet's mind, put yourself into his mouth, and you figure out for yourselves where he is, what's motivating him, what's causing him this pain. And you're all going to be absolutely right. How about that? Okay. All right, Tybal.
So it's a Hebrew question. In English, there are ways that we can describe something, take the word enemy, that are more and less distancing. An enemy, the enemy, my enemy. In Hebrew, when the possessives get physically attached to the same word, does that either linguistically or psychologically connote an even closer relationship than saying, and the my being closest, my or mine? Because they're separate words, it's just not the meaning. But when it's attached as a suffix, does that ratchet it up?
Like Tzorai, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very interesting. We'll see a little bit, it's right away, by the way, in verse 12, that he tends to personalize things. And we're going to see a change that he makes in what he said before, that now looks at it from a more personal way. So it could be that, yeah, he is consciously personalizing because he feels that pain himself. In other words, it's very profound within me. It's my pain, and this is my enemy. It's almost he owns it. So yeah, when you say oyev, like in verse 10 and verse 4, it's out there, the oyev. You don't know. But when he says my enemy, he says, it's my private enemy. Okay, it's very personal, and maybe it increase in his mind. It's an increase even in its intensity. Leon?
Yeah, I was looking up Rashi while we were talking, and he says something that I think makes me understand what he means by this bones, because it's kind of weird to be murdered in your bones, with murder in my bones. Yeah. He said, with murder in my bones, my oppressors have reproached me. It seemed to me as though they were killing me. So confined within my bones was that with which my oppressors provoke and reproach me. In other words, he's being taunted about his lack of standing. That's what it seemed to me like. Like he's being reproached because not being in Jerusalem, being exiled from Jerusalem, he's not acting as a Kohen.
Well, he's not a Kohen. He's a Levite.
Sorry, a Levite. And I get those confused sometimes.
That's okay.
But the fact that it's inside of his body and his bones, that which they provoke him with, may also refer to the fact that he is from those who were swallowed by the earth.
Who were what?
Who were swallowed by the earth. The what do you call them?
Bnei Korach.
Bnei Korach.
Oh yeah, no.
No?
No. That's too far.
That's too far.
Oh,
okay.
No. I'm pushing it there. No, because if he was, he wouldn't be yearning for this God. It just no.
No. He doesn't feel that, but those who are taunting him do.
Oh yeah, but they're dead. I don't know.
Because in that case, they would be Jews.
You're really coming out of left field over here.
All right.
Okay. And I'm not prepared to respond. But nobody talks about it that way. But it's very creative, I must say. He's a Levite, but it's not part. But the point is, remember what we did read in the Numbers after the war with the Midianites. It says Bnei Korach survived, right? So we know that was the tradition for this group of people, right, who survived the destruction. So that's Bnei Korach. So no, he's from a family of survivors. Okay. All right. Next, but I still, we talk about, I can feel it in my bones, right? We use that phrase. So you see, it's not a new concept. It's an ancient concept, right? And when you shudder, it almost feels like your bones are shuddering. So he's really upset. Okay. Now that same line repeats. Remember, we talked about this last week. This is the dividing line. It's repeated 3 times after the first segment. The second now in verse 12, which is the end of the second segment, which is the end of the artificial chapter, and it will be found again in 5 more verses at the end of chapter 40, Psalm 43. And again, we are saying, I agree, that these were psalms that were artificially separated for a reason that we do not know. It is one poem. The terms repeat themselves, and this refrain repeats itself. It's one poem. So again, he says, "Ma tishochachi nafshi." See, here's the point. Why are you brought so low, my soul? Uma teheni alai. And why are you so upset, boiling over? What's the term that he used? Seagull's got a better term than I'm saying now. Stirred up within me, okay, for me. So in other words, his soul, he's asking, why are you attacking me, oh my soul? Okay? Hochili Elohim. Have faith, have hope in God. See, this is the other side, this schizophrenia that he has, right? Have faith in God. Ki ododenu yushuot panai ve'elohai. Because I will continue to either praise him or thank him or whatever. Now, yushuot panai ve'elohai. In verse 6, when it first appeared, it was Yeshuot Panav, right? His presence was a presence of God's presence was a presence of salvations, or as Siegel calls it, deliverances. Now he's switching it to Panai, my presence, my face. And basically he's saying this God has been the source of deliverances for me, for my presence, for my essence, right? If the panim represents the essence of the person who's got the panim, right? So it's talking about me, my me-ness, my me, right? My I, capital I. All right. But the question is Yeshuot, right? But so you understand that he's now personalizing what was a reference to God, taking off the Vav, leaving just the Yud, Pei Nun Yud, my face, my presence. In other words, God was Yeshuot Panai, and my God, and hence my God, Elohai. Elohai is the same. That's personal. So you can see it's all personalized. But the question is, what is Yeshuot? Would have expected Yeshuat, right? My deliverance, salvation, singular. But he says Yeshuot, deliverances, plurals. And I think what is referring to, which I alluded to earlier, is the multiple times throughout his experience where God was there for him. There were multiple times in this man's life when he felt God was there for me. Okay? And he's alluding to that. You can still have hope, he's saying, to his own soul. He's basically talking to himself. Have hope because God has done it in the past, and we can hope that he'll do it again. If only he's listening to me, that's the other side of it. He's maybe, without saying, I hope. That's what he's saying. All right? Okay. So now we're going to turn any question. All right? All right.
Actually, sorry, Rabbi, I missed with my fine motor. I didn't get up, but you said before that 42, and you said more than once, 42 to 47 is a unit.
Say again?
I thought you said that Tehillim 42 to 47 is a unit.
No, to 43 no.
Oh, I'm sorry, 42 to 43. So do you think it's possible, because 12 is so different than the rest, that a later redactor put that in?
No, because the verse 43 continues with the same kinds of language, as you will see. Okay, the same themes. It's very similar. So I would argue that it is a continuation. Oh, I mean, so who divided? Could it be that another hand wrote in the dividing phrases? Yeah, it could be, but it could also be that it's the poet himself, using his artistic sensibilities, who's doing it. I understand your point, but the point is it's very personal. And this guy seems to be really that's the key. He's talking to his own soul. And I think it's very,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah. If he's talking to himself. So yeah, another hand could have stuck it in, but I don't think it's necessary to think that, because it's consistent with the personal anguish that he had. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't read anybody who suggested that, but it's a possibility. I can't dismiss it, because we know that, other hands very often have been laid upon material that was already in existence. We know that, but I think this is part of the original. Okay, now here we go. So now he's saying, verse 1 of 43, Shateni Elohim v'riva rivi migoy lo chasid. Okay, I like Benji Siegel's on this over here. He says, "Be my justice." All right, serve, give me justice, and argue my case in the presence of this lo chasid, this faithful, this faithless person. Me'ish mirma, from a deceptive, treacherous person. Ve'avla tfalteni, and rescue me, or you can say, Me'ish mirma ve'avla tfalteni. That's better. Yeah, the Chassid has a pause. So he says, save me, tfalteni, from this deceitful, evil man. Okay. Now this thing, goy lo chassid. Yeah, just a second. I see your hand. Hold on. Goy lo chassid. That sounds like he's talking to, about a person, right? And he's called a goy. Okay. Interesting. Does that mean is that a non-Israelite? I don't know that the term is used that way, like that. It's used for nation. It could be referring to a whole group of people who are, who are faithless, some entity, all right? But then he makes it an individual from this evil and deceitful man, whomever that is. Again, don't know. Yes, question.
I actually was going to bring up that question. So you've dealt with that already.
Okay. See, our minds think alike, my dear. What can I tell you? Great minds. Or not. I don't know. All right.
I would take that as a compliment.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yes, and I take it as a compliment that you thought the same way. We have a class of very, very intelligent people. And we just listen to yourselves. You are. I listen to you. All right. He moves on. Kiata Elohim. I'm looking. There's a stroke mark here. It's confusing me. Elohim. Kiata Elohim Ma'uzi. Right. You are the God of my strength. Lama zanachtani. Why have you abandoned me? Lama koder et halech balachatz oyev. See, he's repeating the same line that was in the first part. We had it up above. Why am I walking in darkness with the pressure of the enemy? Okay, so that's again, Tybal, the reason why one would think that it's just a continuation. Exactly the same terms. And you have the same thing, AFO, where's your, well, no, that's in the other part. Never mind. But this is definitely a repetition from the other part. Okay. All right. But then now, though, he has a response. He's telling what he would like to see happen. Shlach orcha va'amitcha hema yanchuni. Send me your light. If he's in a condition, if he's in a condition of darkness, send me your light. And if I have to deal with deceit, then send me your truth. They will lead me. You can help me get out of this mess if you just give me things that are part of your essence, right? And that's what he's saying. These are essential elements within you. Light, truth, all right? They will lead me. Let me finish. Yaviuni el har kochi el mishkenotecha. It will bring me har kochecha. It will bring me to your holy mountain, to your dwelling place, right? You can show me, you can lead me, you can put me on that path, God. That's all. That's what I want, right? It's not just for me. I got to be close to you. I want to be there by you. Okay, and your light and your truth can do this for me. Powerful statement, sort of playing on God's more positive side, alluding to the wonderful things that make up our concept of what God is. Okay, Vered.
I want to talk about Pasuk Gimel, Shlach orcha va'amitcha. It comes in the prayer for Lishlom Medinat Israel.
Uh-huh.
When we say, Ushlach orcha va'amitcha lerashea, sarea, ve'yoatzea.
Right, very good. Yes, Yishkoch. Right, and you understand why. Light,
yes,
and truth. And we all governments, how about a non-political political statement? There are many governments in the world today that could use a good dose of both. How about that one? All right. So now you see, I want to get to that mountain. I want to get to that Mishkan, that temple. Okay? You can, it's like, as I said before, you can do it. You can do it. Right? Then here's what he's going to say. Avoa el mizbach Elohim. Now look at this. Elohim, el simchat gili. There's Elohim, el. Ve'odcha bechinor Elohim, Elohai. Elohim is mentioned 4 times in one verse. And remember what I said last time. This is a guy who is obsessed with Elohim. Remember, how many times does that word in various forms appear in these 2 psalms or in this one psalm? 21 times. 21 times. And I suggest I'm sticking by my guns. It's because for him, he's trying to evoke God's awareness of God's strength. Because Elohim usually refer to the strong side of God, whereas Adonai, Yud-He, Vav-He, refers to the compassionate side of God. And remember what we saw. Remember in verse 7, there was a reference to Chesed, right? And Adonai, Chesed, loving kindness, all right? And we said that's because it's associated with that name of God. The fact that name doesn't appear more often leads me to conclude that this is a poem that is written to play up to God's other side, God's strength, because this person is in deep trouble one way or another. And this is not a moment where loving kindness is going to solve the problem, but he needs to have God's strength, God's justice, and that's what we're seeing. And so 4 times in one line, all right? So he wants to go to the Mizbeach of God, right? Now, he doesn't, as a Levite, as a Levi, he does not work the Mizbeach. That's the job of the Kohanim, of the priest. But still, it's the place where he can see and experience, let's put it that way, El Simchat Gili, the God who is the joy of my rejoicing, right? Now here, Be'odecha, and I will praise you, Bechinor. What does a Levite do? He's part of the Levitical orchestra. He plays a musical instrument. This is exactly what his role would be. And you see, he's fulfilling himself now. He's doing what he was meant to do. And he's just thrilled. This may be for him the most powerful statement in the whole poem, right? I want to go back to where you are. And it may be in the end that now he's going to repeat that line, right? Why are you so low, my soul? Why are you boiling over on me with your lowness? Why are you dragging me down like this? Have faith in God. Have hope in God, because I will praise him because he has brought many, many salvations into me, and he is my God. And he's concluding with that. So it may be that the very distance from the temple and his inability to be able to do the jobs that were so important to him, participating in his way in the temple worship of Hashem, that he can't do it. He can't do it. And by the way, this indicates that this must be a place that is operating as the only legitimate place where you can do these things. Remember, up until the time of Josiah, the country was dotted with local shrines, and there were priests and presumably Levites operating in all of these places, and you could worship God there. Here he's talking about one place, and that would have to be after the reforms of Deuteronomy, or at the least Hezekiah. Hizkiyahu tried to do the same thing around the year 720, but he couldn't pull it off. He wasn't strong enough. And he was very busy at the time dealing with the Assyrians and other enemies, okay? He tried. He cleared stuff out of the temple that shouldn't be there, the Hezekiah, around 720 to 700, okay? So it could be that this is at a point where the temple was viewed, the one temple, as the only place he could do it, and he can't get there. And so this deep frustration, maybe what's boiling up, and that's the enemy. Maybe that's the enemy. I don't know. But clearly, this is a person who is torn apart by, on the one hand, his faith in God and his desire of God's closeness. On the other hand, his challenge to his faith and his sense of the distance of God at this time when he needs it. Powerful, powerful poem. This is good stuff. All right. Any final comments, observations? Yes, Rebecca.
So I understand the historical context you're putting on it, but I just wanted to say that if you ignore that for a moment, you decide.
Say again.
If you ignore that for a moment, if you decide that you do not know the history around it,
yeah,
and you just read it without that context,
yeah,
then you could read it as someone who's just very depressed, that they equate depression with this lack of spirituality or God, and that they're just, praying to get that back. So if you just ignore all that, then it becomes all very internal and just a war within yourself.
Yeah, no, I think it's very possible. I mean, people have looked at it that way. There's no question, and have read it that way. And I want to remind you that Psalm 42 is found in our Sidurim for use at a Shiva minyan. Okay, and it's a very beautiful poem in that context because it really hits home of the emotions. On the one hand, you need faith in God. You want to, turn to your faith in God, but at the same time, you feel removed and questioning and feel pain because of your loss. So, yeah, I mean, that's a valid observation. But that's what great poetry is about, right? Great poetry can transcend the setting in which, and you're right, the poetry does not, in trying to peg a time, that's me, the historian. That's my Mishigash. And my point being that it's possible that there were actually, situations that could have evoked this. But you're right. The guy could just simply be, he is a B'nai Korach. And the fact is, it may be that his pain, his doubt, as a servant of God, literally, hands-on servant, his pain, whatever caused it, the enemy, is making it's even worse that he is a guy whose works right, is supposed to be with God, and yet he feels distant from God because of the turmoil within. Yeah, and that could be any time when the temple was standing. So the chronology becomes, unnecessary. Yes, good. All right. Yeah, Leon.
For some reason, after you explained to me about Deuteronomy, which I hadn't realized, it occurred to me that this expresses very much the feelings we have with the old saying about Jerusalem.
Right. Yes, exactly. Right. Well, that's where was that written? And where was that said? Al Naharot Bavel. Right. It was written, the same thing. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Now you think this was hard. Woo. As they say in French, you ain't seen nothing yet. Let me read you Benji Siegel's introduction to Psalm 44, which is, all right, I'll read it. As clear as high noon, but as ominous as midnight, Psalm 44 is one of the greatest testimonies to the depth and complexity of Psalms. The reflection of the dissonance of religious life is overwhelming here. Even if in the end, the fact that this is a speech and a request to God tips the scales toward hope and belief, the principal contention remains. Man has acted properly and God has broken faith. Even the pleas at the end, rouse yourself, awaken and arise, reflect anger and frustration and bespeak incomprehensibility. Why do you hide your face? As Broyles writes, what is perhaps the most remarkable about this psalm is that it is part of Scripture at all. The poem resonates into modernity. M. Cohen suggests that it serves as the litmus test for the cogency and reasonability of any approach to theology after the Shoah. Religious confrontation with God is not a modern innovation. Again and again, the Psalms reveal themselves as anything but simplistic articulations of faith. Okay? All right, I hold on to your socks because this one's going to knock them off. It's unbelievable. And he's right. Broyles, it's amazing that this is in the Bible. And the notion that, he's, in the end, he has hope. When we get to the end, you will see the last statement is not a hopeful statement. You could read it that way, but it sure ain't. All right, here we go. Lab Matseach Libnei Korach Maskil. All right. For the leader of the Korachites, a maskil, we said last time that we don't know what a maskil is. All right. Just to repeat what I said last time, has to do with something intellectual, erudite, could be a cult song, a wisdom song with music, an insightful song. Seichel is the root, meaning understanding of some kind. Seichel. The guy's got a lot of seichel, right? That's where it comes from. So something to do with the workings of the head.
No, but something that we can learn from it.
Yeah, it teaches a message. Yeah, it does. That's true. It's true. That's one of the nuances of it, to be sure. This one, though, I'm not sure what it wants us to learn from this, other than the fact that it's okay to yell at God. Now, that may be something important. And that may be the whole purpose of the poem. Well, you guys judge. Here we go. All right, it begins on a positive note. Okay, and there are three, actually I see four different sections to the poem. All right, so part one, we begin now. And the theme basically is this. We have been told, this is my introductory note. We have been told of how you have been there for us when we have needed to be saved from our enemies, and how you planted us in our land. You did this. We didn't, because we couldn't. You did all of this. It's a recognition of the greatness of what God has done for his people. All right? Sounds great. Here we go. All right. Elohim be'osneinu shamanu, avotenu sipru lanu, po'al pa'alta b'yamehem b'yamei kedem. God, we have heard with our ears. It's indirect. Like, I've seen it with my own eyes. Same thing, right? But he's heard it with his ears. Well, how else would you hear it? What is it? It's emphatic. We really heard this. What I'm saying here is true. Our parents, our ancestors told us the works, the amazing works that you did in their days in times of old. Okay? So we know you have done amazing, amazing things. What did he do? Ata yadcha goyim harashta. Okay? You with your hand dispossessed nations. You took away their land, right? Vatitaem, and you planted them there. Who? Our ancestors. In other words, he took away the goyim here. Remember, it means nations. The negative overtone came after centuries and millennia of those nations being very nasty toward us, to the point where agoy, you know what agoy is, negative, right? The goyim. In the Bible, it simply means the other nation. All right, so you took away their land, and you planted them, the other them, my ancestors, our ancestors, in that land. Teralu umin v'tishalchein. You brought evil things upon these nations, and you sent them out. Evil things, plagues, earthquakes, all kinds of locusts, bad things, and drove them out. So, I mean, it's an image of a very brutal God, you have to admit. But he did it for whom? For us, right? That's what he promised he was going to do. At least it's not as extreme as Deuteronomy. If you read the Torah, you will find there's two different approaches as to how the Israelites are going to take over Canaan. In the first four books, the first four books, God's going to give them the land, and he'll get the people out of there. In Deuteronomy, he's going to kill them, and Deuteronomy says, kill them. Yeah, it's a difference. It's a big difference, right? Because Deuteronomy's got its own axe to grind, which is the horror of paganism. Okay, very mute. Okay, you understand what I just said? Remember, Deuteronomy is totally against paganism to the extremes that the other books are not. I mean, they are also, but not like Deuteronomy. And that's why you have such an extreme statement. Kill men, women, and children. It says so. Read it. The other books don't say that. God will get them out. He'll kick them out one way or the other. So this is dealing with the less brutal of options. And in this day and age, I'm afraid to even say what I'm saying, because somebody might pick it up and say, you see, I don't have to give you the details what I'm talking about. You understand. All right. But anyway, that's the fact. All right. So goes on. But then now here, Kilo v'chorbam, not with their swords, Yarshu Eretz, did they inherit the land. Uzroam lo hoshia lahem lamo. Because our ancestors, not with their sword did they take over the land, and their arm did not save them, or help in this case, save them from the war that they had to rage. Ki yamincha uzroacha or panecha ki ritzita. Okay, but rather it was your right hand and your arm and the light of your face, because you favored them. You favored our ancestor. Okay, so God was the one who is responsible for the Israelites taking the land. Okay, over and over and over again. Now, the light of your face, interesting. Well, where do we learn of the power of the light of the face?
Isn't it Shmos?
Where?
In Shmos, because Moshe can't even look at the face because it's so powerful. He has to look at the back.
Good. Very good. Right. Where else?
Kohanim.
Birkat Kohanim too. Right. May God cause his face to shine upon you. Right. Source of power, blessing, all kinds of things. Right. Exactly. So here it's interesting because in the case of Moses, clearly the idea is that it's deadly. It's so powerful that it can kill. And that is expanded here for that purpose. The power of God's presence itself destroyed. All right. And I remind you when Moses in chapter 24 of Exodus, when he's up at the mountain with the 70 elders having their covenantal meal in the presence of God, it says, and they looked upon God and they did not die. I quote, except it says in Hebrew in the Torah, right? They looked upon God and did not die. It was a kind of a dispensation that God gave them because of who they were, what they represented at that time of the covenant. That was part of the process of the covenant between God and Israel. That meal was a celebratory meal. Okay? All right. So his face as well, because you favored them. Now, this line, I don't think the commentators did enough to interpret it. Atahu Malki Elohim. Vered, turn off, mute. She can't hear me. Oh.
Rabbi, you can mute all of us and then unmute. Yeah, you will one more.
All right, okay.
I'll do it.
How do I do that? Oh, there it is. Let's mute my audio. Wait a minute.
There is a way to do it, but I don't remember.
It would be one by one, but if you click on the name in the participant list, it'll give you the choice to mute.
Oh, I can. There it is. Yes. There it is. Yes. Okay, I did it. Thank you.
Nice enough to leave, but not.
Oh, it's right there, right? Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You can do it.
Okay.
All right. Anyhow, you got this line, though, threw me for a loop. So he says, Atahu Malki Elohim. Again, using Elohim, right? Power. All right. You are my king. Saveh Yeshuot Yaakov. What does it mean? Ordained deliverances for Jacob. Why does that bother you? Why does it bother me? Saveh. What is the author doing here? What's he doing?
He's ordering God.
He's ordering God to command salvation.
Mm-hmm.
When? Now.
Now,
not past. You can't command it to the past, and you can't command it to the future. He's saying, get your salvation act now in order. Get it working. What chutzpah? Do you understand what I'm saying? This is the tzivui form. It's interesting. The tzivui, the command form. It's called the imperative form, right? This has got to be done now, God. He's not saying tzaveh na. Please command, right? He's saying tzaveh. Why is he doing it? I think this is a Vorspeis. It's a foretaste of what's going to come in a few verses. He's so angry. He can't hold it back, even as he's recalling all the wonderful things that God did for God's people. Okay? It's a little thing, but it's powerful. All right. First Tybal and then Rena.
Even though usually when it's Jacob, I think it's the patriarch. When it's Yisrael, it's the tribal figure. But could this be not in the past go command Jacob the person, but in the future the descendants of Jacob?
No. It's ordained now. It could be, but why? You'll see in a minute. There's reason to do it now. That's my point. Why would he, if he were talking in the future and saying, please continue what you did in the past, then he would have said, no, please. But the way he has it, it's not that. He's being a chutzpahdik person, and he is already beginning to vent his feeling. Okay, Vered, I muted you, so unmute. Go ahead.
I want to comment about the imperative of tzaveh.
I just talked about it.
I understand.
Yeah.
I heard, though I wasn't here, but I heard from the other room.
Yeah.
What I want to say is that it is all in the power of God. You did it then, do it now too.
Exactly. We all understand and we agree with you. My point is, it's chutzpah for him to he is not asking God. He's telling.
He's commanding.
Exactly.
But when a person, okay, let's say a person, a nation is in trouble, and when you face catastrophe, Holocaust, wars, problem, then you just say, do it now, help us.
Yes, right. But you're right. But what I'm saying is and that's exactly what's going on.
Right.
But here, the point is, he's not talking, that's not yet his subject. It's in the middle. He's intentionally sticking this in the middle of all of the good things, the powerful things that God did to make that point. Right. But the point is, it's chutzpah. But the point is also, it's because of the bitterness that has welled up inside of him. He can't even hold it back. That's the point. And I'm seeing this as, it's a hint. As I said before, it's a Vorspeis of what's going to come. All right, Rena.
My question actually just got answered, but thank you.
Oh, okay. That's it. Thank you. I appreciate your honesty. All right. So moving on. Again, now he's going to go back. All right. B'cha tzarenu ninagach. Through you, we gore our foes. Look at this notion. Nagach, like an ox with horns. Okay. Very violent. But how? With you. Through your help. Okay. B'shimcha navus kamenu. Through your name, we trample those who rise up against us. Through your name. Again, that's like the face. The face has power. The name has power. And this, by the way, this concept of the power of God's name flows down through the generation. The rabbis have a story that talk about the power of the name of God. And now you understand the third commandment. What's the third commandment? Lo tikach et shem Adonai Elohecha lashav. Don't use God's name for insignificant purposes, for wrong purposes. Don't play around with that name. Why? Because it's powerful. It's powerful. That's why we don't use the name. And that's the tradition. That's the foundation. How do you pronounce Yud Hey Vav Hey? We don't know for sure. We have an idea where it came from. Seems to come from the verb to be. Hayo, Hey Yud Hey. And you know the Vavs and the Yuds and the Heys flip-flopping a lot in ancient Hebrew. So something to do with that, okay? Then again, there's this notion that there was this, like a tribe out in the desert that the Israelites may have come into contact with, and their God's name was Yahoo, Y-H-O, Y-A-H-O, Yahoo, okay? But again, it could be from the same root. Anyway, we don't know how to pronounce it. We're not supposed to. Remember what's the tradition? Who's the only one who knew how to say it?
The high priest, and he only said it once.
And when would he say it?
Only at the one service on Yom Kippur.
Correct.
He had a rope around his ankle and a woman, both a rope around his ankle in case he died in there and a woman waiting in the wings in case his wife died. So he would always be in the correct status to be the married high priest saying this name.
Yes. Thank you. Exactly. Well, and so that way they could pull him out right away, because otherwise he would be matameh. He would be defiling the temple if a corpse in there.
I didn't say it didn't make sense. It's just, it's a interesting thing to think about.
No, I understand. No. I'm not being critical. I understand. I'm reaffirming what you're saying. I agree. Yes, of course. All right. Anyway. All right. So the power of the name, all these things, the power of the face, the power of the name. Okay. Then he moves on. Now he's getting really personal. Kilo v'kashti eftach. Right. I do not depend upon my bow. V'charbi lo toshiani. And my sword will not save me. Right. Me. I can't do it. You can do it. Right. Ki ho shatanu metzarenu, umisonenu heavy shota, right? You have saved us from our enemies and from those who hated us, and you have those who hated us you have shamed. And therefore, Belohim halalnu kol hayom. All day do we praise God. B'shimcha le'olam nodeh. And we will always acknowledge your name, Selah. End of discussion. Okay? All right, with the exception of that chutzpah in the other verse, Tzaveh, he has laid out an amazing picture of the degree to which Israel has been dependent upon God to save them from enemies even greater than they. Tremendous power, making us feel as if, he says, I know how to work my bow and arrow pretty good, but it doesn't matter. It's a drop in the bucket. You are the guy. You did it, God. You're great. We praise you all the time, right? And we acknowledge forever your greatness, all right? The greatness of your name. Okay. Yeah, Rena.
I'm wondering if the reference to bekashti is a kind of play on words, and he's using it like a bakasha, like a request, like his prayer.
Yeah, when I first read it, I thought that.
Yeah, I did too. So maybe he's saying, I don't even trust in my own prayer anymore, and that's why I've got to command you, God.
Yeah, but then it would be bevakashati.
Right. So it's maybe not a complete, kind of phrase.
But you got to look at the context also. We're dealing with weapons of war, right? And so it really doesn't fit in there. Yeah, but it's interesting. I had the same reaction you did, but then I corrected myself because the context, you got to always look at the context. Okay, who raised their hand? Marcy, was it you? Somebody raised a hand. Nobody raised a hand. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Yes. All right. Number 2, second part. J'accuse. Your history of saving us when we could not say, this is my introduction. Your history of saving us when we could not save ourselves, noted above, gives us the right to accuse you, God, of dereliction of duty and abandoning us now when once again we are under attack by our enemies. Now they kill us, disperse us in exile, and shame us in the process. Okay? And you will see that Rabbi Siegel in his commentary notes that there is a long list, I used the term, a shopping list of a wide variety of calamities that have befallen the people, a relentless piling on of horrors because God is asleep. He's not doing his job. 19 different terms or different notes, different elements of how they are suffering now follows. And here we go. Zanachta v'tachlimenu. You have neglected us and humiliated us. V'lo tetzei b'tzivotenu. You don't go out with our armies. Tishivenu achor minitzar. You turn us in retreat from our foe. Umisonenu shasulamo. And those who hate us take spoils for themselves. Shasu, from the root shin, samach, he, means to plunder. Now, titmenu ketson ma'achal. We are like food, like sheep who are given as food, ma'achal. Not food for sheep. The sheep are the food. That's us. They devour us. Uvagoyim zeritanu. You have dispersed us among the nations. Here's an interesting one. Timkor amcha belohon. You sell your people for a small amount of money. You sell us on the cheap. Hon is wealth, right? Great amount of money. You send us for pocket change. Velo ribita b'mechirehem. And you have not set a high price for them. Tisimenu cherpa l'shchenenu. You make us the butt of shame for all our neighbors. La'ag v'keles l'svivotenu. Scorn and derision for those about us. Interesting, the word keles, kuflo lamed samach. On the one hand, it means to scorn somebody. On the other hand, it means to praise. I checked it in the dictionary. No explanation. Total opposite. Same word. Absolute opposite. That happens sometimes, right? The word sachal, if I'm not mistaken, can be seen as having opposite meanings as well. So that happens in Hebrew. The process, I don't know. Vered.
I learned that in Aramaic and in, let's say, Hebrew from ancient time, the word keles means shevach, means to praise. Mm-hmm. But then it changed the meaning as the Hebrew developed, and it changed completely.
But it's still being used in rabbinic terms.
Yeah, from that period of time. But then after that, it just changed the meaning.
Yeah, but even after that, though, it was used both ways.
Okay.
It was used both ways. Go figure. Okay, don't know. Can't explain it. All right. Anyway, going on. Tisimenu mashal bagoyim. You make us a byword among the nations. All right. A mashal for what? Obviously for derision, for lowness, for worthlessness, bad things. Minod rosh bala'umim. We are the like Nava Nad, right? It's a wanderer. Nad Nun Dalad means to move, right? To move around. So I mean, we are the people. You know how you move your head in a way. Yeah. In other words, physical motion of people when you mention the Israelites. Yeah. In other words, common ways of making fun, of deriding us. Again, Kol Hayom, Plimati Negdi. All day long, my disgrace is before me. It's a repetition from verse 10. Uvoshet Panai Kisatani. And the shame of my face has enveloped. The shame of my face has enveloped me. I have a long face. It's so long that it covers my whole body. Okay? Mikol Macharef Umegadef. Mipnei oyev u mitnakein. And it's enveloped when? From the presence of a vengeful foe and the voice scornful revilers because of the vengeful enemy. Okay, more of these things. So these are the different forms. I read this, one right after another. You should see piling on all of these different forms of physical, verbal abuse that God is just sitting there and doing nothing about. Where are you? All right, now the next part is even more chutzpahdik. Here we go, my summary. We are the righteous one, and you, God, are the one who's at fault. We have not lost faith in you, God. We have not turned to other gods, even though you've cast us into a state of deep darkness and fear. Check us out, and you'll see that we have indeed, out of loyalty, given up our lives for you. Yet you just stand there and do nothing, and let us be treated as sheep ready for the slaughter. There is zero sense of guilt. This is not like Musaf. Because of our sins, we have been exiled from our land. The guy there's no guilt. We are guiltless. He doesn't admit any guilt. We are innocent. You are the one, God, who's at fault. That's a preview of what's now going to do. Okay. Lo zot ba'atnu. Below shchachuna. All this came upon us, and we have not forgotten you. We have not been untrue to your covenant. Lo shikarnu bevritecha. We have not been disloyal to your covenant. The brit exists. It's eternal, and we accept that. We have not denied that. Okay. Lo nasoga chor libenu. Our heart has not fallen away. V'tat ashurenu mini orchacha, nor have our steps swerved from your path. Right? We have not. We stay on the path. Our heart is committed to you. However, ki dikitanu bimkom tanin utchas alenu b'tzalmavet. Though you crushed us into the sea monster's place. Look at that. The dako, dake, right? Daka, dun, dalet, kaf, hey. You squeezed us, made us into fine things, into the place of a sea monster. Basically, you fed us to the sea monster, okay? And you have covered us with salmavet, with dark the shadow of death, if you want to read it that way. I mean, it could be Tzelmut, Tzalmavet, shadow of death. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Okay. Or just could mean deep darkness, one way or the other. But you see, it's very interesting that you've given us over, as it were, as food to the sea monster. That's the sea monster, right? The sea monster, the Tanin, is a symbol of a pagan goddess even, Tiamat.
Didn't we have last week, weren't we talking in the previous,
yes, the deep.
about the home?
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah, right. And so it's the same notion. That's that creature that lives way down there. That's where you've sent us. That's what it feels like. It feels like you've sent us down there. Right? And we're covered with profound darkness. Im shachachnu shem Elohim, v'nifrosh kapenu le'el zar. If we forgot the name of our God and spread out our hands to a strange deity, halo Elohim yachkor zot, ki hu yodea ta'alumot lev. Surely he would have discovered this because he knows the secret of the heart. We can hide nothing from God. Check it out, right? You'll see. We're slates. Our slate is clean, God. You got nothing against us. But boy, do we have stuff against you. Okay, Tybal.
Just a quick one. I'm using the JPS 1917, and in 20, they translate what I'm assuming you're translating as sea monsters. They translate it as jackals.
No. Yeah. No.
I'm not disagreeing. I just thought you might have a drosh on it, on why they do it the difference.
They did, because the more research has realized that is that's what this is. It's used for that's a term that the Jeremiah, I think, uses, or was it second? No, I think it's Jeremiah or Ezekiel. No, one of them, for Pharaoh. He's the monster who lives in the Nile. Okay, crocodile is a name. Okay, yes, no, it's a sea monster. It's a sea monster. Yeah. Okay.
According to my translator, the sea monster is a Canaanite cosmological myth.
Yeah, right.
And so it's closer than Egypt even.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay. Right. So God would have found out we're not guilty. So here we're moving along. Ki alecha horagnu kol hayom. For your sake we are killed all day long. Nechshavnu katzon tibcha. We have been regarded as sheep for the slaughter. By the way, there's two references here for sheep who are being killed. That image is not, it's very funny. Not funny. But the fact is, you hear sheep to the slaughter, right? Very common phrase. It's practically found nowhere in the Bible. I checked it out in the concordance. Used very, very rarely. You know what made such a big deal about that? Isaiah 53, verse 7. He is brought like a sheep to slaughter. It's in that chapter. Now, in our circles, it's not a very popular chapter. That's the suffering servant of God chapter. If you'll notice, if you look at the Haftorahs that are read, the Haftorahs of consolation between Tisha B'Av and Rosh Hashanah, they're all from 2nd Isaiah, and a number of them go in sequence, except there's a big gap between 52, the end, and the beginning of 54. That chapter is left out, so we don't even read it as a Haftorah. What made it big? Anybody know? Any guesses?
Do you mean in our day, like the Shoah?
Nope. Christian scripture. Yes, Paul. A good Jewish boy. You know that, because it's about a good Jewish boy. It's Jesus. He's the sheep that was led to slaughter, right? I mean, that's the mythology of Christianity. That made that phrase into a big phrase. I think there are 3 or 4 different formulations of that in the entire Hebrew Bible. It's not what you call something you're going to put on the marquee on the first night of the showing of the movie, right? But here it is twice, obviously, right? Because what is a sheep? Can you think of a more innocent animal than a sheep, right? Sheep require special protection. Everybody kills sheep. People kill them to eat. Animals kill them because, they're defenseless. Okay? And that's it. Okay. Marion.
We also have our shepherds. So it's a contrast to the shepherds,
Yes, good. Yes,
the shepherding of the sheep. They're, in a way, they're kind of, I won't say sacred animals, but they're loved and cared for.
yes,
So you're not just sending an animal to the slaughter. You're sending an animal that we love and cherish and care for to the slaughter.
good. Exactly. And that's a metaphor here for the Jews, right? Yes, very good. Good point. But again, you understand in the context of the overall Bible, that phrase not used a lot because sheep we know what sheep are exactly. Yes, and you're right. By the way, that switches. I just want you to know, just for the sake of providing a complete picture here. If you read the Talmud, there are there's the sages and the sources in the Talmud looking at herdsmen, distinguish between two different kinds of herdsmen. There's the herdsman of the Behema Gasa and the herdsman of the Behema Daka. The Behema Gasa, the big fat behemoth, are oxen and cows. Those are the Behema Gasa. The Behema Daka, the thin ones, the small are the sheep and the goats. All right, so they distinguish between the two. Whom can you trust more? The shepherd, the shepherd, or the cow herdsman? Who is more trustworthy? The shepherd or the cow herdsman?
The shepherd.
The shepherd, right? Because they take care of their sheep, right? Wrong. Sorry. No, because what do cows eat? They eat grass.
Grass, yeah.
What does a sheep eat? The grass all the way down to the root. They kill it. The grass that the cow eats can grow back. When the sheep gets finished, it's dead.
Oh, wow.
And it used to be the herdsmen were sort of allowed to they realized that these people needed to go out into lands, and sometimes they would cross into private property. And, when the cows walked in, they said, okay, it's the cows. They'll fertilize the place a lot and we'll still have grass. Bye. Get the sheep out of here. They're going to kill my grass. They're going to kill it for my sheep and for my oxen. Get them out of here. I don't want them. So therefore, you can't trust the shepherd because he allows bad things to happen. Whereas the cow herder, he's all right. And this is true. It's a paradigm in business dealings. In business dealings, you got to be suspicious of the shepherd. All right, isn't that ironic? Because, what you said, Miriam, is so true. The sheep, they're loving, yes, and very protected and so forth and so on. Yeah. All right, hands up. Who wants to say something? I saw Fievel, and then I saw, who else? Marcy.
Mine was up, but I think mine doesn't work.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to comment that it's interesting, particularly we're given Psalms, we're talking about the temple, that David was the shepherd in terms of trustworthy and not trustworthy. And he wasn't trusted.
So was Moses.
Yeah, Moses.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think of Moshe. I was thinking of David and his zipper problem.
So was Jacob.
Yeah.
And we call God Ro'enu.
But wasn't Cain...
the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
But wasn't Abel also a shepherd?
Yes.
That's early.
Yes. That's right. Yep. All right. Very good. Okay. All right. Got to catch up here. Right.
I think.
So again, okay. All right. So now we're going to the last part. So what I define again, all of this happened, right? And we did not rebel against God. We kept the faith. We even let ourselves be. Notice it sort of ends on that note, right? We are killed all the time. We're like sheep to the slaughter. It's a high note of horror, right? We died for you, God. And look how you're responding to us. What's going on here? All right, so part D. A last gasp plea, yet with other claims against God. So there's a frame here. The first and last verses you will see have a repetition of similar words. It calls to action, but it's interwoven with more complaints of God's being sound asleep and the resultant unresponsiveness, even as we suffer. Okay, let me turn the page. And so we remain spiritually and physically near death, lying in the dust. So here's what it says. Ura, lama tishan Adonai. Rouse yourself. Why do you sleep, O Lord? Hakitza al tiznach. Tiznach, there's that word again. Wake up. Don't neglect us forever. Lama panecha tastir. Why do you hide your face? Tishkach onyenu v'lachatzenu. Why do you forget our affliction and our oppression? Ki shacha la'afar nafshenu. Okay? Our soul lies prostrate in the dust. Davka la'aretz bitnenu. Our belly held fast to the ground. You have turned your face and your mind away from us, and we lie face down in the dust, prostrate and belly down. In other words, your face is turned that way, and because of that, our face is in the mud. No connection. Kuma Ezra Talanu. Get up, save us. Ufdenu loma'an chasdecha. And redeem us for the sake of your love, or as is appropriate with your love, with your chesed. You have chesed. You're known, we're reminding you. You have shown to be filled with chesed. Well, where is it? Okay, so it's a lesson. It's a reminder saying, and so some people have said, you see, they really believe. This is, no. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, we're here lying in the dust. We can't get up because you're not getting up. Think about it. We're in the dust here. You get up and redeem us. And that's what's appropriate. That's what you should be doing. And that's it. Okay. All right.
It reminds me a little bit of...
Wait, Marion had her hand up first.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Marion.
I was just going to say there's another parallel here with how we prostrate ourselves on Yom Kippur.
Yes, of course. That's right.
Where, here we are in this vulnerable, completely...
Exactly.
Whatever position, and
you're turning the other way altogether.
And God is not seeing us or hearing us or knowing what's happening.
Yeah. All right, Leon.
Well, it reminds me very much of how some Nitzolei Shoah look, after the Holocaust.
Exactly. Well, remember that's what that guy Cohen said at the very beginning, right? This is inappropriate. This is in the post-Holocaust era. This is exactly fitting. Almost it's prescient. Yes, Marcy.
It also brings to mind for me at the beginning of Shmot, where we have Anchu Ha'am, and then we have afterwards that it says Vayiskor et Brito.
Yes.
That there has to be this calling out, the sense that it was the very fact that Bnei Israel called out to God, and then he remembered his brit.
Right. Yeah. Well, who else does that? Moses, right? When he talks, right? He talks God out of killing the people. He says, you made a covenant. Do you want to be known as the God who breaks covenants? That's how you want the world to look upon you? God says, oh yeah, I forgot. It doesn't say that. But the point is, it carries the day. Yeah, exactly. Right. So here's the point that I just want to get back to this word as chesed, chastecha. Benji Siegel defines it as your steadfast love. And he's right. But this is a certain kind of love, chesed, right? And the point is, chesed, if you look in the dictionary, my old friend, the Curler Baumgartner, the KB, you're going to be surprised because chesed is a word that they first and foremost associate with a covenant, brit. The brit in Deuteronomy in particular, the terms brit and chesed and brit are intimately interwoven. And the whole point is chesed can mean love, but it means the steadfast love and commitment that are part of a covenantal agreement. And God's covenant with Israel is an expression of God's chesed. So the covenant and the basic point is, remember, he said up above, we didn't forget your covenant. We have never deviated from the covenant. So his mentioning of chesed down here picks up on that again. And he's trying to do a Moses on him, right? Remember your chesed. You've got this covenant. We remembered it. Now you show us that you can. And he leaves us hanging because we don't know what God did. We don't know. But clearly this is written, again, it sounds here that the enemy is a real material. There's some Holocaust-like experience going on, because he's talking about the people being sent out into exile and being killed, being berated. A lot of detail on that. And here I wonder if indeed it could have been from periods in the Israelite history when these things were happening with enemies coming through. And again, I've got to say that period, it could be the period of the Babylonian conquest. It could be 100 years before that when the Assyrians came through. But in those last centuries before the destruction, there was a lot of havoc taking place in Eretz Yisrael. And I can see this one coming out of that, okay? And the guy is just totally beside himself. And again, it's coming from a Levite in Jerusalem, right? And he's at the core. He spends his life in the holiest place on earth. And he's saying, what kind of a God is this? I'm here, I'm working, I'm praising this God all the time. And where are you? We got this temple running. We know we're trying to be as faithful as we can. And it's not working. What kind of God are you? Powerful stuff. And here it is in our Bible. So, they're interesting, huh? So in this, I'm going to conclude with the lines that we say when we, as part of the traditional marriage betrothal, when you, actually we say this when they put on tefillin, but it's terms of betrothal from the prophet Hosea, chapter 7. Ve'arastich li le'olam, ve'arastich li b'tzedek u'b'mishpat u'b'chesed u'b'rachamim, ve'arastich li be'emunah v'yadat et Adonai. This is what God says through the prophet Hosea, who lived around 750 BCE. I betroth you unto me forever. I betroth you unto me with righteousness and justice, with loving kindness, chesed, right, and with compassion. I betroth you unto me in faithfulness, and you will know God. That's what God said to the people, that Hosea says, okay? Now, this guy who wrote the poem may be aware of this, and he's writing this 30, 40 years later when it's not like that, and who knows? Anyway, I can only guess. But you understand now how this get into the Bible. That's the Bible. We are very happy to wash our dirty linen in public, right? You got Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, you got Job, you've got this and other Psalms. But this is the most power in this way, the most negative of all of them. So there you have it. What's today's date? Today's date is June 25th, right? 2024. You have read the most devastating chapter in the Bible. Sleep well. I didn't mean that. Nice. Okay. Next week, check the schedule. Hold on. I can get it for you. All right. One second. Here we go.
Where do we find the schedule?
It was in the email that came when it talked about 2 new classes and it laid out.
Right. Yes,
it wasn't specific per class. It was
general. Here we are. Right.
It was grouped together.
Yes. So we're continuing. We're supposed to read through Psalm 47. And then in July and August, we're behind schedule, but that's okay. All right. So next week
But Rabbi, that is the tradition.
What?
You said we're behind schedule, and I said, but that is the tradition.
Of course it is. Yes. All right. Yeah. Next week, Psalm 45. Just move forward. All right, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.